fresh plum jelly or plum jam. But first of all, I thought you might like to see where I got the plums from. A friend of mine invited me up to the orchard and the plums were ready for the picking. So we're here at the orchard and we've come upon our first plum tree and they are looking extremely ripe. Plum picking. Not too far, Chester. We're doing some plum picking. Do a lot of our picking by hand, and whatever drops, our tarp will catch it. So it looks like we've got a nice branch here. Look how ripe they are. Wow, that's fantastic. So we're just going to grab, and they're actually coming off pretty easy because they are so ripe. And there's quite a few on the tree. A lot easier than picking cherries. That one's cute with the branch. That guy's trying to hide. This is so great that we can pick these from just growing in the wild. Of course, you have to thank Maureen for letting us come and pick the plums from the orchard. I'll have to make her some plum jam in return. Fruit is fresh, but my sleeve is soaking wet. They are so perfectly ripe. Fantastic. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So that was a great treat, going out to the orchard and picking all these fresh plums. Now the plums have, in terms of the commercial varieties, there's two. There's the European plum and there's the Japanese plum. And the European line of plum is the one that you actually dry and turn it into a prune. Except that I think the more acceptable term nowadays is dried plum. I guess there are some negative connotations with prunes. Regardless, it is the European variety that they dry into the dried plums, and the Japanese variety, which is mostly eaten fresh. Now the plum dates back to some of the earliest fruits, along with dates and figs and raisins. It was cultivated about 2,000 years ago by the Chinese, and in terms of growing, the plum grows on every continent with the exception of Antarctica. The largest producer of the plum is China, producing more than 50% of the worldwide production. Plums are very healthy, but there is a difference between the health benefits of the fresh plum and the dried plum or the prune. So you're getting the concentration of the vitamins and the sweetness, the natural sugars that are occurring in the plums when you actually dry them into a state of a dried plum or a prune. And I say that because the plums have vitamin C, they have vitamin A, vitamin K, They're very high in antioxidants, and they're said that one plum has the equivalent or more antioxidants than a handful of blueberries. So there's a lot of really good healthy minerals and vitamins in the plums themselves, but things get amped up when you dry them. And I think that everybody knows what prunes are good for. You may have used them yourself in the past, but needless to say, the plum and the prune is very good for the digestive system and for good colon health. It certainly has a lot of fiber, which helps eliminate a lot of the toxins in your body. So if you are having an issue with perhaps not being as regular as you'd like to be, definitely the prunes is the way to go, and also the plums, but you would have to eat a lot more of the plums to have the same effect. The other really unusual health benefit is the use of prunes or dried plums for the staving away of osteoporosis. It is said to help with mending the fractured of bones or in bone health, which means that you can prevent or maintain or offset osteoporosis. And there are even some suggestions with some tests that indicate that there may be a restoration of bone loss through the use of eating the prunes, not the plums, because we're talking about the high concentration. So for good bone health and good digestive health, it's recommended you eat 3 prunes a day, and they are delicious and sweet. But today, for our purposes, we're going to be making some plum jelly or plum jam. So for today's recipe, we're going to need, of course, 6 cups of plums. We're going to need 1 cup of, I've got monk fruit sugar, but you can use regular sugar. So 1 cup of your sugar or sugar alternative. We're going to need 1 package of Bernadine's no sugar required pectin, and a large stock pot, 250 ml jamming jars. We'll use about 6. We've got the magnetic wand, not necessary, a spoon, and then we need some tongs or lids and a small pot to sterilize the lids as well. So let's get started on our recipe. We need to render 5 cups of fruit and juice combined. So the plum juice and fruit that we're going to be cooking in our large pot needs to measure out to 5 cups in order for this jelly to set. So that's the goal. So in order to get our plum juice and fruit, we want to bring it to a boil. And we're going to either bring 6 cups of whole plums, throw them in your pot with 1 cup of water, and you're going to bring that to a boil, and then you're going to let it cook on medium to high for about 10 minutes, crushing the fruit until you see that everything dissolves, just like I did here. 6 cups of whole plums with the pits and a cup of water. And now we're going to bring this to a boil. We'll start off on high, bring it to a boil, and then we'll turn it on medium and simmer for 5 to 10 minutes until all the fruit is soft and the skin has broken down. So that took about 2 or 3 minutes to bring it to a boil. Now I'm just going to turn it to medium-high and let it simmer for an additional 5 to 10 minutes. So it's been 7 minutes, and at this point we just want to help the fruit along by crushing it. And I can feel those, it's hitting the pits at the bottom of the pot. That's my 7-minute timer. And see what it's like. Those skins are getting pretty soft, but I'm gonna let it keep cooking. Gave it another minute, and I've turned off the stove, so the total time for it to cook on medium was 8 minutes. Now I'm just going to let it cool until it gets to room temperature, and I'll be able to pass it through my sieve and collect the juice and the pulp to make the jelly. So this is about as much as I can sift through this sieve, and the majority of it is all the pits. So I'm left behind with this rich sauce, which we're going to turn into our jelly. Now this has to measure out to 5 cups. So if it doesn't measure out to 5 cups, you can add an extra cup of water or apple juice to bring it up to measurement. The other method, which I've done both, and honestly they both take the same amount of time, the other method is simply by taking the pits out of the fruit, and by that you're going to yield 4 cups of prepared fruit, which is the plums without the pit. You're going to add that to your pot with a cup of water, and you're going to bring it to a boil, and then you're going to cook it over medium until everything is nice and soft and tender, and that's going to take somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes. If your fruit is ripe, it's as easy as just doing that, opening it up, removing the seed or the pit and throwing it out. It goes fairly quickly, so either method works. If you do remove the pits from the plums, this will give you a jam that has all the fiber and the skin in it, which gives you a different consistency as opposed to the other one that you're straining is going to give you more of a jelly-like consistency. So either or, but for our purposes, since I've already prepared our juice, we're going to go ahead with that. So I'm going to take you over to the other station and show you the next step. In the meantime, you're going to put your 6 jars on a cookie sheet in the oven at 225 degrees for 20 minutes. But we're not going to turn off the stove. We're going to leave them hot while we're making our jelly. Here we have a large pot that we're going to boil our lids to sterilize them. And a good trick that I heard about was lay your lids in opposing layers. And that way, they won't stick to one another. I'm here at the stove, and now we're just going to take our prepared juice and pulp and make sure that we are getting 5 cups of liquid. We're at 4 cups, so we're going to have to add, you can either add a cup of apple juice, you can just add a cup of water. So I'm going to add a cup of water to bring that up to 5 cups. So now we have our 5 cups of liquid juice and pulp ready to go. So our lids are boiling, our jars are sterilized, they've been in the oven at 225 for 20 minutes. Our solution or our juice and pulp is cold. We've got our sugar ready, we've got our pectin ready. Now we're ready to make the jam. So now we've got our total station is ready. We've got everything boiling, our lids, our measuring cup that we're going to use to pour. I've just got this on low. We've got our tongs. And the first thing we're going to do, and our liquid is cold. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add our pectin right into our prepared juice. And you want to stir that in until it's completely dissolved into your solution. Just make sure that everything is dissolved. You want that pectin to be totally incorporated into the juice. And once it is, then we're going to turn our stove on high. And we're going to bring this to a rolling boil. So it's taken almost 5 minutes to bring it up to a rolling boil. And you don't want to keep stirring it, because the more you stir it, the more you're cooling down your solution. So you're never going to really see that rolling boil. And leave the solution, let it come up to a rolling boil on its own. I'll show you what that. So there's our timer. That's exactly 5 minutes. This is what a rolling boil looks like. And at this point, we're going to add our entire cup of sugar or sugar alternative at once. And you just want to stir it in until it dissolves. You can see that by adding the sugar, you're cooling the solution. And we're just going to stir it until it's fully dissolved. Maybe a minute. So that's about a minute. And you can see the sugar has fully dissolved. Now we're going to bring this back up to a boil, and we're going to let it boil hard. And once it starts boiling hard, we're going to boil it hard for exactly 1 minute. So here it goes. You can see it's starting to heat up. It's starting to roll onto itself, but we want a hard boil. About a minute, we're achieving this hard boil. And the only time you want to stir this down is if it is reaching the top or it's coming too close to the top, then you want to stir it down. So I would say that is a hard boil. We're going to set our timer for 1 minute. You want to let it do its thing, and you never want to double a recipe just by doubling the amounts, because it will not set properly. So if you're going to make jam and you want to make a batch, many batches of jam, you're going to have to make the one batch at a time. We've got about 10 seconds left of our hard boil. As soon as the timer goes off, we're going to turn off the stove, and we're going to start assembling our jars while everything is hot. So I've just turned off our solution. Everything is hot. Our jars, our lids, our measuring spoon. I've got, a piece of paper towel just to clean off the edge of the jars. And we're going to work quickly, because this is part of our processing. We will not have to use a water bath by using this method. So I'm going to use 2 jars, or I'm going to fill 2 jars at a time. And I've also got my oven mitt, because my measuring cup is hot. I'm just going to set that off to the side. And we're going to bring up 2 jars at a time to make sure everything is super hot. We'll take our measuring cup, dip into our solution, and fill up our jars, trying not to touch the sides. And the great thing about using the measuring cup is that you're pouring in the exact amount every time. Again, you want to work quickly. I've got my magnetic wand. And you want to add your lids, just finger tighten them. So our next lid really does make things easy. So just finger tighten. We're going to put them off to the side, and the less you fiddle with them, the better. Get another clean paper towel. Try to be as neat as possible, but inevitably you'll always get a few little drips. 1/4 of an inch headspace at the top of the jars. And I think we are only going to get 5 jars of this batch. And it varies, 5 to 6 jars, just depending on how much solution you start off with and how much evaporates. Oops. And how much evaporates while you're cooking it. So let's see if we're able to get 5 full jars. So it looks like we didn't get a full 5th jar, which means that we are going to have to put that jar into the fridge, but our other 4 jars, we're going to let them sit overnight for 24 hours undisturbed, and you will hear popping is the lids actually sealing. So you want to hear the popping, and you'll see that the lids will be indent. So we're going to pretend that it's been 24 hours, and here is our jelly. It has totally set, as you can see. And now for the taste test. And the color is really, really pretty. See? That was a lot. Oops. It is a little bit too much, but I just wanted to show you how nice that spreads. It's very flavorful. It tastes like plums. There's a tartness to it, but it's just enough tart and sweetness for my sweet tooth, but it is full of flavor, and that's the whole point. You're not using the traditional 1 cup of sugar per jar of jelly. You're using 1/6 of a cup of sugar, whether it be regular white sugar cane, which is considerably less than a cup of sugar, or you're using 1/6 of a cup of sugar alternative. And the sugar content doesn't really change the recipe in terms of its setting. The sugar content really is about personal taste and the amount of sweetness that you want to add to your jam or jelly. So you can feel free to alter that up to 3 cups, and that's based on the no sugar required pectin. And those are the instructions, or the manufacturer's instructions, in order for your jam or jelly to set. And you like the jam or jelly, I hope that you share it. Happy plum season. Plum delicious. Enjoy.